There have always been those who are deniers of history.
The Honourable Justice Murray Sinclair laid the path for reconciliation in Canada while forcing the country to confront a history he knew many would find hard to accept.
What took place in residential schools amounts to nothing short of cultural genocide.
The 94 calls to action he led remain a path forward.
He's the person that we've turned to when things have been really, really difficult.
Ry Morin worked closely with Sinclair as the first director of the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation.
We have lost, in some ways, a figure that we've relied upon to be the moral consciousness of Canada.
Sinclair was Manitoba's first Indigenous judge. An Anishinaabe from Peguis First Nation, he knew racial prejudice firsthand. As a young lawyer, he was often mistaken by police and judges for the accused.
He grabbed me by the arm and was going to lead me back to the cells, because he assumed the white guy was the lawyer.
In 1990, Sinclair co-led a tension-filled inquiry into racism in Manitoba's justice system. He also led an inquest into the deaths of 12 infants in pediatric care in Manitoba before rising to Queen's Bench. But the 2008 Truth and Reconciliation Commission is where Sinclair cast the most light, spending 6 years listening to residential school survivors, including Adeline Weber.
All of those commissioners really had to, at the end of each day, probably do a lot of soul searching.
The 94 calls to action led to some progress, including a papal apology. But Sinclair acknowledged reconciliation would take generations.
The public still largely struggles with the question of what can we do about it.
Shortly after the TRC, he served as an independent senator for nearly 5 years.
His commitment to Indigenous peoples and to all Canadians was absolutely extraordinary.
The Prime Minister calling him a giant, while at the Manitoba legislature, where a sacred fire now burns, Manitoba's Anishinaabe Premier called Sinclair a mentor.
The example he showed for us is that no matter the scale of the challenge that we experience, that we can always respond with love.
In a statement, Sinclair's 5 children said he was always known as an exceptional listener who treated everyone with dignity and respect. We know that stories of his kindness, generosity, and fairness will circulate for generations to come. In one of his last public appearances, Sinclair was honored at a Winnipeg Jets hockey game, cheered as an elder and a statesman. For all the stories of pain, despair, and racism Sinclair encountered, he always remained an optimist.
As long as we have that belief in the need to improve the future, then the future will be improved.
Change he acknowledged would be slow but remained confident is inevitable. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.